What's going on, Niner fam? It is Peter Lucas. This is the Niner Fanatic Podcast, and I got with me today special guest, Mr. Al Sacco from 49er Web Zone. You know him from No Huddle Podcast. You know him formerly from KMBR. He's on Odyssey, correct?
Correct.
I'm not wrong on that? Okay. But we got a lot to talk about. Still 49ers. Ayuk still isn't signed for everybody that doesn't already know that. But before we get to any of it, you know we got to hit the music.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'd like to know,
are you ready for start time?
And once again, it is Peter Lucas. This is the Niner Fanatic Podcast. And once again, I got Mr. Al Sacco with me today. You know him from No Huddle Podcast. I know you do that show regularly with Brian Rennick, who is also a friend of the show. Appreciate you coming through, Al. But before we get to any of it, why don't you tell them where they can find you on the socials and all the stuff where they can find all your content?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on at LSacco49 on X or Twitter or whatever the hell it's called now. We just are trying to get our YouTube station going. So 49ers Web Zone YouTube, check that out. Subscribe, please. Also, wherever you get your podcasts. So podcast, YouTube, and pretty much Twitter. That's where I live.
Awesome. And all the links to Al's Twitter and his YouTube page are in the description. So make sure that you go over there and give my guy a subscribe. Make sure that you give the video a like. Make sure that you give both channels a subscribe. Make sure that you hit the bell so you get the notifications for when we go live. And tell a friend to tell a friend so we can be friends every day, every week. But, Al, so it's not really much. And we can actually start talking about, I think the biggest story right now is Brandon Ayuk. But I think a close second is the 49ers depth with all the injuries that are going on right now. And I think that that's more of a thing to be worried about. It really gives me 2020 vibes. But luckily it's happening in training camp and not in the middle of the season like then. But how are you feeling about the 49ers depth and the injury issues that they're going through currently?
You know, I was talking about this today. We recorded with Mark Willard from 95.7 today, and we were talking about this with the bad vibes and, you know, the Super Bowl hangover and everything like that. And if you think of the Niners' last few off seasons, or I should say preseasons, all they've been is like bad vibes. You've had QB controversy, you've had the Bosa contract, the Debo contract, and none of it matters when the lights go on. So that's kind of what I'm telling myself right now is we've been through this before. We've been through preseasons and camps where we're like, what the hell are they doing? The drama and everything else. And then the season happens and then the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. So who cares, you know? But this year is a little scary in a lot of ways. The injuries for sure. I mean, when they canceled the joint practice, Brian Baldinger said, you know, you're going to be behind. All these other teams are doing joint practices. You're not. That's going to put you behind. And that made me kind of take notice when Baldy said that. So that's one thing there that worries me, them being behind. And also just somebody, when you look at the receiver room, you know, I don't want to make this all about Ayuk because I feel like that's all we've talked about. But if he's not there, or if he's just starts slow because he's coming to camp late, which looks like that's inevitable. That's best case scenario, right? That he's going to come into camp late. What the hell are you going to do at wide receiver? I mean, what are they doing? You're going to have Debo. Debo is Debo. I think Kittle will be a target monster if that's the way things play out, if Ayuk's not there or slow or whatever. Juwan Jennings is what he is. I think he's very good at it, but I feel like he's more a role player in that option. Then where are you going at wide receiver? The way things look this year, and I know Cowing hasn't had a good camp, but it looked like you would have Ayuk, Debo, and Jennings, and then you could ease these two rookies in, and maybe a Ronnie Bell makes it, or Chris Conley makes it, or Trent Taylor, because they need him for punt returns. But now, as soon as you take Ayuk out of the picture, do you have to rely on a rookie or two? And Pearsall can't even get on the field. He can't even get on the field. So he's going to be behind. Ayuk's going to be behind. Where's the depth? Is your week one starter Chris Conley? at this point, at the X position. So that's a little bit scary there. In the defensive line, when Kalia Davis went out, I thought he was going to be a good role player for them this year. If there's one thing I'm worried about, it's the run defense. They have to show me that they stop the run. I know they brought in a lot of guys. We're not familiar with them. We have to see how they do in the system, but he goes down. I'm really worried about the defensive line. Once you get past those 4 starters, how is it going to look? Is it going to look like the playoffs where Detroit and Green Bay were able to run all over them? That's a little bit worrisome to me. So I think that there are more things to be concerned about, but the Niners have certainly earned the benefit of the doubt with what they've done the last 5 years or whatever it's been. But anybody who says they're not concerned is either not paying attention or maybe lying.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And a lot of the points that you just made, I mean, I've got them written down here just because they're important to me. And with Ayuk, as far as the contract situation is the contract situation, right? It's a negotiation. We have to deal with whatever the however long it takes. And they might not end up with Ayuk. Okay, like you said, what happens then? Who do you go to? And I went right to, it's either Ronnie Bell or Conley in my mind. And I really like Conley, but starting, I don't like on a regular basis. I don't
Right.
know that. Now, do you think that they would go out and try to just get somebody at that point if Ayuk just for whatever reason says I'm not playing? He already said he's not playing on the fifth year option, which I don't really him, to be honest. But I think it's just another tactic. But if he does, what do you think they do then?
I think they're going to get creative if he's not there. So that's true. If he's not there, you mean, right? If Ayuk isn't around in the beginning. Yeah, I think they're going to have to get creative. I think it would be Conley. That's where I would go just because he's been a vet. He made some plays in the playoffs, but you're going to get a hell of a lot of Debo, a hell of a lot of Kittle, and maybe you'll see McCaffrey in the slot. They'll do things like that. I just think Kyle's going to have to go into his bag a little bit for that kind of things. But they're going to suffer if he's not there. The one game that they didn't play with him, where they didn't have him last year, was against the Giants early in the season, and the numbers were good. Kittle had a big game. I think Debo had a big game. Purdy threw for over 300 yards. Can that be sustainable for a long period of time? Can they have enough offense if they do that? So, when you really think about that receiver room, and look, we just talked about the fact that Pearsall's been hurt, the fact that Ayuk, again, best case scenario, he's going to be a little bit behind. Best case scenario. So it could be a little bit dicey earlier in the season with that, and they may have to find ways around that. If you play fantasy sports, if Ayuk is not there, everybody's going to pump Debo up, and with good reason. But I think, again, Kittle is going to be a target monster. Like, I think you could see Kittle have a year like he did, 2018-ish, 2019, those kind of years where he had was a lot more involved in the passing game before they had all these weapons if Ayuk isn't there. And, the development of Purdy is huge too. Is he going to get better? He's already a good decision maker. Does he continue to improve on that? And they can find other ways and other guys to step up. But Juwan Jennings will play a bit of a bigger role. But I think those targets are just going to be, you're going to see more Debo, more McCaffrey, more Kittle is what they'll do.
Yeah. That would be the assumption. And I think you're right about the Kittle part. I think that he is the one guy that he's an underrated route runner, in my opinion. And he gets caught blocking so much that people just kind of forget. They forget that he's really that good at route running. And he's going, I think that he could have one of those years that he had early on in his career. Just anytime really Kyle just decides to make him the focal point. And,
right.
But in my mind, because everybody's talking about how Debo looks so great in camp and he's done so much work. Does he up his game? And does he get a little bit better at route running? Does he put a little bit more effort in the blocking and kind of make up in spots where Ayuk has been like kind of the leader in that aspect? Do you think Debo kind of steps up his game a little bit, or is Debo just going to be Debo and he's just going to get more touches?
I think Debo being Debo is kind of stepping up his game, right? Like he's so good when he's on, and he's going to be motivated, I think, for either one, is he going to stick around here? Or two, he might be playing for a new contract somewhere else. So I think there's a lot of, he came into camp in really good shape, and you're going to get a motivated Debo this season. I do think Debo and Kittle are going to have good years this year. So they'll rely on Debo. The issue that's going to come up is they don't have that downfield threat without Ayuk. So the offense might look a little bit different. Is it going to be more in a box? We know Purdy has that. It's going to Kittle and Purdy. Purdy has that kind of Tony Romo in him, where he likes to run around, he likes to look downfield, he likes to make the big play, and that's sometimes he throws picks or throws balls where you're like, oh shit, where's that going? But he likes to do that. So are there going to be guys downfield that he can do that with? Because Ayuk was his guy. Ayuk is such a perfect fit for Purdy. Because Purdy throws with anticipation. Ayuk is a timing based receiver, good route runner. It's just crazy to me that like they can't figure this out. In a season that might be the last really go with this core that we are where we are. I can't believe it.
It baffles me as well.
I'm frustrated with both of them. I'm frustrated with the Niners and I'm frustrated with Ayuk. It's not like I'm blaming one or the other. It's just been the perfect storm of like, what are you doing? Like, where are we right now? What has the thought process been? How are we doing this on August 15th or all through August really is what it's been. So it's just been super frustrating.
Yeah. Because the 49ers always wait forever, right? To get their big deals done. And, everybody's pointing to the Bosa contract that, they waited until such and such a date. Like, we've still got time. All of that. I get it. At the same time, I'm with you. I think that it's both sides' fault, because I think the 49ers, it's a little bit 49er. I think they're taking a little personal that some of the things that have been leaked to the media, some of the things that Ayuk said. Mm-hmm. And I also think the opposite. I think that Ayuk is taking to heart some of the offer, just so that they wouldn't budge, and that they're on how much they want to pay him. And I think a part of it is the structure. I do think that that's a part of it, but I think that both sides are getting in their feelings a little bit, and it's just silly. At a certain point in a negotiation, somebody has to be the grown up and just say, okay, what is best for us? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how it looks. just let's do what's best for the team. And I think we all know what's best for this team is to get Ayuk in the building. I don't think there's a better situation for the 49ers. And it's we're just waiting, and we keep hearing that it's getting close. That the finish line is we can see it. I'm not even going to ask when you think that that's going to happen, because that's just
I don't think anybody knows.
It's been done. It's been done and said 20 million different ways. It's just silliness at this point. But you talked about fantasy football. I'm going to put you on the spot. Which 49ers offensive player other than Christian McCaffrey do you take in fantasy?
It depends on Ayuk. So
let's say Ayuk is on the team.
If Ayuk is on the team, and again, I would have said Ayuk, but because he's going to start so late, Debo is going to have a big year. I think if everybody's there, I really like Debo this year because he's going to be motivated. And if Ayuk isn't there, I would say Kittle, just because I think a lot of those targets are going to go to Kittle if that's the case. But I was, again, when I was talking with Mark earlier today, he brought up if Trent Williams isn't there, or if he misses time. You said McCaffrey, and he's like, I would pause on McCaffrey. And I looked it up. The 2 games Williams didn't play last season, McCaffrey had 99 yards on 27 carries combined in those 2 games. So that's a little concerning too. If Trent isn't there and we're spending all this time on Purdy, when Trent Williams might be the bigger story. But I'll worry about Trent if he's not there in 2 weeks. But here's the thing though, Peter, like when we talk about the contracts, the Niners have huge decisions to make after this season. Oh. You have Greenlaw, Hufanga, Ward, Lenore, Purdy, Banks. All those guys need new deals. I really hope that they've learned from their mistakes and they just get this done early. They just address it. I mean, especially with Purdy, obviously, but even guys like Lenore and Ward, I would do that now. what are you doing? You're going to wait for another market to explode. You're going to wait for somebody else to do a ridiculous deal, and then, they're worth whatever. That's what happened with the receiver thing. If they did the deal, when the Colts signed Michael Pittman for $23 million a year or whatever he ended up signing for, maybe you have Ayuk for 25, 26 mil, and none of this is even happening, but they like to wait on these deals. It's been it hasn't bit them in the ass, like we said, because they've ended up where they needed to be later in the season. But Bosa wasn't right last year. He even said it. He's like, I wasn't in football shape. Debo came in and out of shape. It has hurt them. They have been playing with fire. They haven't gotten totally burned yet, but I feel like right now, maybe that burn's starting to happen a little bit. So Lynch and Shanahan are smart people. I don't know if they're making all these contract calls. I don't know if it's more Prague or whatever, but they have to, I think, at this point, learn to say, like, all right, we need to adjust this stuff earlier and get the guys that are important to us in the door and locked up.
Yeah, I think it's weird to everybody. The 49ers go against every single convention you can think of with it's regarding football organizations. They don't draft the way anybody drafts. They don't sign contracts the way anybody sign contracts. Mm-hmm. They don't pick the same players that other teams would have picked. Like it's really kind of weird. But it works for them. And I mean, we're very thankful that we have this organization, the culture in the building as fans. It's great. Like, I mean, it's great to watch. It's maddening at times because you're just thinking, okay, well, this is obvious. They're going to do this. And then they go completely the opposite direction. But at the end of the day, they end up in the floor is the NFC Championship game. If that's the floor.
Right. Yeah. Which isn't, I know everybody thinks it's sustainable. It's really not sustainable. At some point, the ball is going to bounce the wrong way. That's why I felt like last year was kind of their year to win it. But it is. They have the best roster in the league. I mean, I don't think the depth is what it used to be. They still have like 11, 12 dudes at least who are like studs. I mean, like blue chip, like studs. That's half your starting lineup. Like, that's insane. When the all 22 or whatever. And when you look at some of the mistakes that they've made, just Trey Lance alone, to not have first round picks and whiff on a quarterback like that at number 3, the 2017 draft, they've made all these mistakes, and yet they've still been able to get players to make this roster. It's incredible. And I don't know if you want to call Purdy skill or luck, how they fell into him, but that obviously saved a lot of asses that he ended up being what he is. But it's insane that everybody makes mistakes, but the Niners have made some big ones. And to this point, we'll see in the next few years if the depth isn't there or whatever else. But to this point, it hasn't hurt them. Yeah,
it's weird, but yeah, like I think Brock was absolutely lucky. I mean, they could not have planned. Yeah, it's impossible for them to have planned that he was going to end up being what he was. I mean, by all rights, he shouldn't have even had more than like a couple of reps in practice at all. He should have been where Josh Dobbs is fighting for the backup spot.
Yeah, it's an incredible story.
Yeah, it's wild, but he's here, and we are very thankful that Brock Purdy is. He has been, unbelievable. But the team. I can't wait to get Ayuk in the building because I do think that is going to unlock some. It's going to go back to what the 49ers were last year. I do think that we've got to see Purdy unlock this offense to a point, just because I think that Kyle puts in it his system almost has a ceiling that he puts in himself. Mm-hmm. And to me, and it's really, it's kind of weird, like because he doesn't, and he said in that Kawakami interview that he welcomes his quarterbacks to change this, change that, call protection if they need to, whatever the case is, but they don't want to. Well, I feel like he needs to. That's a way that he needs to develop Purdy and just kind of push him in that direction, because in my opinion, it would go a long way in unlocking this offense. Because right now it feels like almost like there's training wheels on, but if Brock is the guy, you don't need to have training wheels on like you did for Garoppolo. You don't need to have training wheels on like you did for all the other quarterbacks that were in the system. So, but I don't want to go down that route, like because we could be here all day talking about Kyle's offense, but I want to move on to the running backs, like the depth in the running back spot. And is the running back 2 spot Jordan Mason's to lose? Because that's the vibe that I get. I've been a Jordan Mason apologist since he's been on the roster, and it just never seemed like he was going to get his bona fide shot. But I get the vibes that he is actually, like, Kyle's actually starting to trust him a little bit. Do you think that he ends up with that running back 2 spot?
I think he's got a really good shot. And the reason I think things have changed, I was like you, and I think fans were too, where you'd watch him run and you'd say, how is this guy not getting on the field? He's a terrific runner. But then you heard Bobby Turner say this year, he had some growing up to do and he's growing up. So maybe there were just things we didn't see, that he wasn't mature enough to really impress the coaches. That's kind of what it sounded like to me based on what people said. And this year he has matured. He's turned the corner in those things. And because of that, I think the talent's always been there. Because of that, I think that's where he can push and be that running back number 2, because whether you love Eli Mitchell or not, when Eli Mitchell's on the field, he's a good player. He's not available. He's hurt all the time. So to go in and say, this is our number 2, it's just a matter of time, I feel like, before he's not there. And the way Mason looked the other night, there weren't a lot of things in that preseason game that I was overly impressed with. I was really impressed with him, really impressed with how he ran. And I think that he can be, because that running back spot, all of a sudden, again, you can't. McCaffrey's had 798 touches the last 2 years when you include the playoffs. You got to take the foot off the gas him a little bit. And I don't think they're going to do that in a 3-point game in the third quarter. I think where you do that is when they're up 30-7 on the Steelers in week 1 and he's still feeding McCaffrey. Don't do that. Can't do that anymore. That's when you need somebody else to kind of get those carries. It's where, I think Jordan Mason can fit in or whatever, but they draft Garendo. He gets hurt. Cody Schrader, looks like a Blake Corum light. Maybe he could be that type of player, but I know he didn't run behind really a good line in the first preseason game, but he sort of feels more practice squad to me at this point. Matt Breida, I love Matt Breida, but he's been fumbling a little bit. So I think it's Mason's to lose
in that game.
Yeah. And I'm a big Matt Breida guy. I've always really liked Matt Breida, but I think right now Mason's got the arrow pointed up, and I think the fans want to see it. And I know I do. And I absolutely also want to see them ease McCaffrey out a little bit here and there, find spots where you could rest him, because again, at some point, I don't care how in shape you are. I don't care. He's a running back. It happens to running backs. He's in his late 20s. Some point again, could be an injury or a fall off or whatever. So if they want him around, he said he wants to play into his 30s. If he wants to do that, they have to start finding ways to not have him take that pounding and have so many touches.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, Mason would be a perfect complement. He would be a perfect complement because he can take those short yardage situations, those when teams are stacking the box, and those moments when we don't need Christian McCaffrey trying to gut it out for 2 yards. Mm-hmm. We need him to open. In my opinion, we need him to open up, to make the defense have to choose what they want to do in those situations where that it's going to a short yard situation. I don't want Christian McCaffrey running into walls. We need to preserve him, but Mason thrives in those situations. Mm-hmm. In situations where the box is stacked and everybody knows that all you're going to do is run the ball, and he still averages 5.5 to 6 yards a carry. It's going to happen. So it's I just love the kid, and I love the fact that he did all the stuff with the jugs machine, and he's just trying. He's trying. He's working, and he's trying to be better. Because it's hard to get out of Shanny's doghouse, but if he can see daylight out of that, Shanny is all about it after you worked your way out of it, and so that would be huge. He could be here. I could see them him being here for a few years after that, because I don't think he would cost a lot of money, because he's not going to get a ton of yards sitting behind McCaffrey. But yeah, it's but the other situation, you talked about Cody Schrader, And I agree with you. He wasn't behind the best line.
Mm-hmm.
However, I've always I know he has good feet. I know he has good feet. I know he has good vision. You don't get 1,600 yards rushing even in college without having a couple of things. I've always questioned his athletic ability and because in the NFL, it's great that you have great feet. It's great that you have great vision, but you have to have the athleticism to be able to hit the hole now. And I don't know that he has that gear, in my opinion. But I agree with you. I think he's going to be a practice squad guy. Maybe in a couple of years, like he could be like a serviceable backup or in that conversation. But I always saw him as a practice squad guy. I love the story, and I love that he's like kind of a ready-made. I think you could put him in any situation and he'd be fine. Like he'd be serviceable. But yeah, I do like the kid. I just don't see the athleticism there.
And I think he's ticketed for the practice squad at this point. I kind of wondered if he could sneak his way on the roster, but I'm not sure, unless there's a lot of injuries that he can be the third or fourth guy. But I see him definitely ticketed for the practice squad.
Yeah, absolutely. So tight ends, So I saw Latu catch a couple. I think it was a couple in the preseason game. And granted, there wasn't, like you said, there wasn't a lot to like in that preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
But just seeing him go out there and actually catch a ball, and he actually ran a pretty decent route. Like, do you think he ends up making this team?
Oh man, I mean, I think Kittle, Saubert, and Willis are locks.
Yeah.
So if they keep 4, I really like Mason Pline. Again, I think he might end up being.
I was going to ask you about him.
I really like him. Again, probably a practice squad guy, but really like him. I don't know. I just feel like he has such an uphill climb. I know he was a 3rd round pick. If he makes it, he's going to be the 4th tight end that they keep. And I don't know, again, does he even, what does that even mean? So to me, if he is somebody that they're not really sure about and they think Pline will get signed by somebody, I'd rather see them keep Pline personally, but I just really like Pline. But I don't know, man. I think Kyle clearly wasn't pleased with him. I think he's got an uphill battle to make the team, and we'll see. I mean, if he has a couple good preseason games, maybe, but right now the jury's out.
Yeah, I think he's auditioning for other teams right now. But Pline, I love that you brought up Pline because I liked that pickup when I saw when I was able to dig far enough and find any kind of tape on him. Like I just like the size, the athletic ability, the fact to me that George Kittle mentioned him in the preseason game was when he did his little interview on the sideline. What to me was significant. Just because that makes me think that that he's pulling for him, and I just think he's definitely going to be a project, but the attributes are there, and maybe you've seen, I don't know if you've seen him in camp or anything like that, what do you feel about Pline?
I just think he's a guy with a lot of upside. I like his size. I like, especially in the red zone, his ability. He's one of those guys that, the Niners tend to find these undrafted guys and late round guys that turn into really good players for them. Even if you just look at, we're talking about Lenore's contract, is what, a 5th round pick. They always seem to find kind of some of these guys. So he's another one. Again, I think Evan Anderson was a guy I liked, an undrafted free agent that they signed, the defensive lineman. Pline was one, Schrader was one. But there's a reason why these guys were undrafted, right? So I think we do have to kind of pump the brakes with it. But I think the 3 of those guys, I feel like, probably taken for the practice squad, but maybe eventually Pline's the guy maybe you could see maybe later in the season next year start to maybe make his way into that tight end group. They signed Saubert for a reason. Again, I think he's an absolute lock. And
I think he looked good.
Yeah,
I thought he looked good.
Yeah. He's a lock, absolutely. And then it looks like Braden Willis, whatever they have planned for him, whether it's tight end or he's the eventual replacement for Juszczyk, I don't know. But Pliant's another practice guy. We'll see. It's another jury's out. It's early in the preseason. You kind of have to wait and see how these guys look and progress. And again, who's healthy in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever when they do the roster cut down. That's huge too.
Yeah. And you mentioned it with Braden Willis, like kind of if he's going to be the Juice's eventual successor. And it didn't look good. I'll be honest, to me, and I don't, maybe you have a different, can shed a different light on it, but it didn't. And I get it. Maybe he hasn't played much there. That's going to take some time for him to learn that type of position. But I kind of question, like he's a little tall for the position, and he blocks tall in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Which Juice, what makes him so good is he's low to the ground, he gets that leverage, and I don't know about Braden Willis at fullback. How did you feel about what you saw, and do you think that there's something there? Because I don't even like the way he blocks as a tight end.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's concerns there, and certainly, I don't think anybody you replace Juszczyk with is going to be like Juszczyk. It's going to be really hard to find him, right? Another guy like that. Having said that, his snaps have decreased, over the years or whatever. The offense is maybe going to more of a passing offense with Purdy. So maybe is that position still as valuable when Juszczyk is gone, which could be as early as next year? I don't know. Do they draft somebody? Do they find somebody who's a free agent that they had their eyes on type thing? Feel like that's a position where Kyle's going to find somebody he says, all right, this guy fits what I want to do. And it could be some rando dude from whatever, you know what I mean? Like some rando.
I thought it was going to be Jack Coletto.
Yeah, a lot of people said that. Yeah, but I feel like that's somebody who it's going to be like a Jack Coletto type where that Kyle finds and like, yeah, that's kind of my dude that replaces him. But I mean, does Willis have a shot? I mean, I guess, but he's another one. He's a late round pick. I feel like we're kind of the way the drafts have gone, and again, the Niners have been really good in the late rounds. But when we're talking about the depth and we're talking about who's going to replace who, whether it's in the secondary or whatever, like, oh well. This guy will Beal or like Winters or Graham, all these. I don't know. These are 6th and 7th round picks. Like I get what you're saying, and in a perfect world, yeah, but they got these guys really late in the draft. Like, is it really fair to like expect D Winters, who looked fast the other night? I think people got to pump the brakes with him. I do think the upside is there, but he made a lot of mistakes too. Like to say like, yeah, this 6th round pick, the 7th round pick, this guy is going to come in and Daryl Luter's another one, like, and be a star. Come on, man. They're like, probably not. Like, out of those 4 or 5 guys, like, maybe one of them will stick when you're talking 6th, 7th round picks. So that's where I'm a little concerned with, like, where do we find our next Juszczyk? What if we have to replace Travarius Ward? What if we have to replace this person? What if we replace that person? What happens if Greenlaw leaves? I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows. How these players are going to step up and react and be. This past draft will be huge because, they haven't had the 1st round picks. They lost picks in the McCaffrey trade. So the guys that they took in this draft to replace those guys will be huge. Renardo Green, obviously. And the Green pick is going to be really interesting to see because they passed on I always forget the name, the tackle for the Chiefs. Looks like it's going to start.
Kingsley Suamataia.
Yes.
That was my pick at 31, by the way.
And the Niners trade back and they don't, and now he's the starting tackle for the Chiefs. So that's going to be 2. And then again, the Ravens took him, Rosengarten, right? Roger Rosengarten, the tackle.
He's
Ravens
a starter.
took him pick before the Niners. The Niners could have traded up to get him if they really wanted him. So there were 2 tackles there that I thought could have been a starting tackle for you, whether it's over McKivitz this year, or maybe replacing Trent in a couple years, and you passed on them both for this corner. So this corner better be a starter for you. It's those kind of things that like stick in my head as we talk about these replacements for these guys. We don't know. Everybody likes Mustafa, but we don't know if he's going to be able to replace Hufanga next year. It's a lot of wait and see with the Niners with this.
Yeah, I agree. Like the draft is a sore spot for me because I do all the mock drafts on the planet and I do my shadow draft every year. Shout out to BD Peacock. And the 49ers don't pick like anywhere near like where I would have picked in any of my shadow drafts. And sometimes the guys, but Kingsley I knew was going to be really good. I knew I was sold on him, and that one really hurt when they went Pearsall.
And it might hurt them.
Not,
it might hurt them.
Yeah, and who knows? Pearsall might end up being this, that, and the third. I get it. Like, and I hope he is now, but at the same time, Kingsley I felt was at the very least he was a year away from being a starter, at the very least. And now he's the starting left tackle for the Chiefs, and he looked good. So and here's
really, the thing too. Really I think again, as we talk about them, the Niners are the Niners because they have studs, right? They have these blue chip guys, and if you look at their drafts, so 2017 Kittle, 18 Warner, 19 Bosa, Debo Greenlaw, 20 Ayuk. I'm missing some people, but they drafted blue chip core guys, not just this guy starts or this guy with blue chip dudes. The past 3 drafts, who's a blue chipper? Purdy and maybe Lenore. I would have said Hufanga a couple years ago, but he's not going to be on the team next year. I don't think. I really don't. I don't think they're going to pay to re-sign him, especially coming off the injury. You don't know. So really, you got all those guys in those other drafts. Who have they gotten? And I don't want to hear like, oh, they drafted like Eli Mitchell or like Aaron Banks. Those guys are but they're replacement level starters. Banks is probably going to get replaced next year. Mitchell started for a little while. I mean, McCaffrey would start over anybody, but again, he's kind of a replacement starter running back. I don't mean guys like that. I mean blue chip dudes that make you great. Purdy, maybe Lenore the last 3 or 4 drafts. That's why this patch draft is so important. If they missed on Green, I love Dominic Pooney. That's a really good pick, but he's a guard. It's not. So if they missed on Green, if they missed on Pearsall, or if they're just okay starters, that's when you start to see, okay, you're not as good as you were a couple of years ago because you don't have these blue chip guys anymore. And it's hard to get blue chip guys. It is. I'm not saying it's easy, but they were able to do it for a 4-year period, which is why they're so good now. And those guys are getting older. You lost Armstead. Armstead was a blue chip dude, whether people like him or not, because he was hurt. He was a blue chip player. So
he was. Yeah, and at the same time, we talk about them we're talking about late round players. Well, that's because they're blue chippers that they found most of them were in the later rounds. And so people have come to expect the 49ers to find gems in the later rounds. They don't expect the guys in the early rounds to even pan out, I don't think. Like, I think fans want that to happen.
It's gone, yeah.
But I don't think anybody expects them to be they expect it to be like Drake Jackson. They expect it to be like the McGlincheys and those guys. And not that McGlinchey wasn't a solid NFL tackle, but I mean, I think we saw after he left that it's not going to be any different anywhere else with him. He's great run blocker, but just cannot pass block to save his life. But
and you see, go ahead. You see those misses. So you miss on Kinlaw, and you got to go out and spend $20 million a year on Hargrave a couple of years later. You miss on Jackson, and then you got to trade for Chase Young, and you got to sign Leonard Floyd. So there have been some, and everybody misses. Everybody misses. It happens to every NFL team everywhere. You probably have more misses than hits in the draft. You do. So, but they've kind of suffered for that, and you may see that unless Purdy is Drew Brees light. I keep saying if he keeps taking steps forward and he's really a franchise QB, that can cover a lot of warts or whatever. But some people have their head in the sand with this. I think you're going to start to see some holes in the next. Not this year, but next year there's going to start to be, oh well, this person's not here and that person's not here. And if they hit on some of these guys, they'll be okay. But if they didn't, and it's been the way that it's been the past few years, that's when you could start to see, all right, the Niners aren't quite the Niners anymore. I hope it doesn't get to that, but we'll see. We just don't know yet.
I just think I give so much kudos to this coaching staff. Like somehow Kyle has even with the coaching staff, Kyle has found ways. He's lost coach after coach after coach after coach, and somehow the coaching staff still seems like one of the best coaching staffs in the league.
He's excellent at finding coaching talent.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, and I feel like they get the most. Forster should be. I mean, they need to pay that man as much as he possibly can because he gets the most out of subpar talent more than any coach in the league. Like
replacement level lineman he's getting to the Super Bowl with, essentially. Yeah. Yep.
The fact that Nick Sacco looked serviceable in a preseason game was amazing. I thought that Nick Sacco should have been gone 2 seasons ago. And but it was so good to see him actually play well. Like, I thought he played well. And then him next to Pooney, I thought played well especially for a rookie.
It's first game. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I thought he played well. And I know some people are picking apart some of the tape and saying that he was out of position. And I know PFF gave him a terrible grade. I get it. But the eye test told me that he's closer to being solid than he is to being bad. And
I think for rookies, you're looking for good signs. They're not going to come in and play a perfect game. It's his first game, for him and guys like Mustafa and stuff like that. But he was really good in the pass blocking, Pooney.
Mm-hmm.
And initially looking at it, I thought he did well run blocking too. And then I saw the grade and I saw the same thing you did, like picking this part and that apart. But it was his first game. Of course he's going to make mistakes. Of course he is. You just want to see positive signs there and things that you could say, okay, yeah, the upside is there. And I definitely saw that with Pooney. I think they're injured at guard, but I think he's got a really good chance to start week 1.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up start. I think that they're going to use the injuries. The 49ers, I've noticed, they like to use an injury. They might hold a guy back for an extra week just to see what they've got in another guy. And I think that that's what's going to happen with Pooney. I thought that, because he wasn't a great run blocker I was kind of surprised the 49ers picked him because he wasn't a great run blocker in college. He was mostly a pass blocking guy, which I think that shows up on in the preseason game. Yeah. But at the same time, I was pleasantly surprised, and I like that he looked as good as he did, and him dragging Jordan Mason in for a touchdown was great. That was great. Like, I loved it. But the O-line is going to be, the fact that, now Jalen Moore, Jalen Moore is having good reps against Nick Bosa in camp. Like that, I don't remember ever hearing anything like that before this camp. What do you think is all of a sudden Nick Sacco is having good reps? All of a sudden, Jalen Moore is having good reps. What do you attribute that to? Is it just opportunity, or is it like that they're, or is it something else?
I think it's opportunity. I think it's growth. If you're in a system for a few years, you would think you're going to grow in that system. And if they've kept you around for a few years in that system, they see something in you that they think you can grow. So I think part of it's growth. I also think part of it is it's camp. People are working on things. Like Bosa might be working on, let me try this move or whatever. With guys like that, especially if Jalen Moore, God forbid, if Trent Williams isn't there, but if he ends up playing, let's see how he does against that Jets defensive line in week 1. That's the stuff you really want to see. So I take the camp stuff with a grain of salt. Like I always say with the Purdy interceptions, I don't care. He's working on stuff. It's stupid to even look at that. But the same thing with guys who typically, again, were backups or whatever. And you're like, oh, he's having a great camp. That's great. But let's see if I want to see what he does when the season starts. Because it's so different. Once the lights go on in week 1, everything is so different. Football is a game that, it's played at such a high intensity level. And I feel like right now there may be at 70% intensity when then you get that 100 when week 1 starts. So that's when I really want to see what these guys are going to do.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think a lot of people look good in preseason, and then week 1 hits and all of a sudden those teams that were hot in the preseason, they don't look so hot and they're back to being as bad as we thought they were. Let's move over to the defensive side. And I want to talk about the defensive line a little bit. And if the 49ers, they lost Drake Jackson, which I don't know, who depends on who you talk to, if that was a loss, if that was really a loss. But as far as the injuries along the line, if they have any significant injuries, let's say Gross Matos goes down or one of the interior guys goes down, like Jordan Elliott and or McKeel Collins. If one of them go down, can the 49ers stop the run?
I don't know if they can stop the run with those guys yet. I love the Malik Collins signing, but he's more of a pass rusher.
Yeah.
Javon Hargrave is more of a pass rusher. Jordan Elliott got huge praise from Chris Kocurek, saying that, they think he could be the DJ Jones type guy. But I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, I watched tons of Jordan Elliott with the Browns. I barely know who he was when they signed him. But I did go to school on him a little bit. And what I saw with the Browns and read from the Browns, everything is that he was all over the place in the run game. I know he had there was a stat going around that he had a good grade with whatever, but like when people watch him every day, they're like, yeah, some days he looked great, and other days he looked lost, or, from play to play or whatever. So that's a little bit scary to me. Now, again, can they get the best out of him? Sure. We've seen many who come here and guys like that where you're like, who the hell is this guy? And then having a really good, career with the Niners. So we'll see what happens there, but that is a huge question mark for me. Leonard Floyd's the type of guy who he gets his numbers, but there's not a lot of constant pressure with him. So you'll be like watching a game, be like, oh, Leonard Floyd got a sack. There he is type thing, as opposed to, when you're watching a Bosa and the dude's just wreaking havoc all the time. Now, with Hargrave and Bosa on the line and Collins, is Floyd going to get less attention maybe? And yeah, so he's a vet. He's a good player. It's a good signing, but he is a little bit on the older side. But the line, there's a lot of question marks. Nobody knows how Gross Matos is going to be. He didn't look good in the preseason to me.
Didn't look good in the preseason game.
No, there was no pressure there. So if he's somebody they're relying on, and it seems like that he is, again, you just don't know. Maybe he comes in and again, it's like an Amenahue or an Arden Key where you're like, oh, look, he does great in this system. Like, it's a great fit. We'll see, but we just don't know. And their defensive line last year wasn't good, despite the names on it. Once you got in the playoffs, Armstead was amazing in the Super Bowl. Bosa's Bosa, but for the most part, that defensive line wasn't good. Chase Young wasn't good. There were issues there. And obviously even the Niners thought so because they revamped it this offseason. But are those guys going to work out? We'll see. But it's funny because now the secondary is the best part of the defense, the deepest part of the defense, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. It's going to be interesting. I still think they're going to be good this year. I do. I still think, they're a playoff team, but there's a lot of question marks as to whether they can be the 49ers, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Bosa's there, Warner's there. We love the corners, but is there enough there to be that Niners defense again? I don't know that. It may be more of an offensive. The offense is going to be good, assuming everybody's there. The offense is going to be really good, assuming everybody's there. So maybe it's more of an offensive team this year, and there are higher scoring games because the defense didn't play well. Really that Cardinals game is when they said, all right, when you started to get run on and you were like, wait a minute, is there something going on here? And I don't know that it looked good. It certainly didn't play well in the 2 games in the playoffs before the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I looked at, and I don't want to put all the blame on Steve Wilkes, but at the same time, I really think it was a lot of cover. It was the way that he deployed his coverage a lot. And that guys ended up on islands, and which the 49ers to me have always had missed tackles. But they were always run to the ball. If you got a missed tackle, somebody's going to be there to clean it up. And there was that mentality that there's always somebody to back you up. You just go full on speed at the guy. At the very least, you're going to slow him down for the next guy to come up and make the tackle. And I know that it didn't look good in this preseason game, but I saw more of that. And that's what I kind of liked. It seemed like they were running to the ball. And even though they were missing tackles and we had second and third string guys out there, I feel like if Warner and the Greenlaws and all the guys are out there, a couple of those missed tackles aren't missed tackles. And they're a couple of those guys are going to be right there to clean up after if there is a missed tackle. And so I just like the fact that it seemed like they were being more aggressive and with their coverages, and it wasn't so much off coverage because I think they were almost soft last year. I know that they didn't give up a ton of points, but it felt like they had just gone soft. You definitely could not call them bullies. You definitely couldn't call them bullies like they used to be. And so, yeah, I just think that this defensive line, far the defensive line goes, I think that you're right about Malik Collins. I think that it's weird to have him and Hargrave paired together because they're both pass rushers.
Yeah.
And so how is that going to look when it comes to the run? But if they get that part together back to where they just want their defensive linemen to get to penetrate and then have the rest of the guys there to clean up, like then it becomes a different story. And I think that that's kind of what they did before when D'Amico was there. Guys would miss tackles all the time, but there was always somebody there to clean up. And yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, and they have to, because you look at the competition they're going to have in the NFC this year. Obviously, Detroit can run the hell out of the ball. The Rams, if Stafford's healthy, the Rams scare me a little bit this year. If Stafford's healthy with Williams and Blake Corum and Puka and Kupp and everybody else, like that offense can be really good this year if Stafford's healthy. They can run the ball at you. Green Bay gave them all they could handle. And now Green Bay has Josh Jacobs, so he's going to get the ball. The Eagles bring in Saquon Barkley. These are teams that can run the ball. So the Niners are going to have to prove they could stop it, or that's how teams are going to attack them. Then the offense stays off the Niners' offense will be kept off the field. The other team is going to control the clock. You could have issues, but again, this all remains to be seen.
Yeah, and remember, Josh Jacobs killed the Niners the one time he played.
Mm-hmm.
He killed the Niners.
Yeah.
And who was the? I'm trying to remember the other run. Oh, and then the Eagles got Saquon.
Yeah, it's going to be.
That's another name. Eagles
are going to be good again this year. I know they had their issues last year. Eagles are going to be a tough team this year again.
I just question how the loss of Kelsey affects that offensive line, because I know there's going to be an effect.
Oh yeah, you're talking about a Hall of Fame center. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to go downhill, or you're just going to be a drop off there. So, but I just think they have so much fire. Hurts was hurt last year, so I think that had a lot to do with his issues. And the Eagles have a ton of firepower. I still think the Niners are better than them, but on any given day, who knows? Especially with Saquon on that team, that could change a lot for them. It'll be interesting to see how they respond this year.
Yeah. So I want let's move on to the safeties. So because corners, I feel like the 49ers have a ton of depth. I know they have some guys that are kind of dinged up right now, but I think they're really kind of on pace to be kind of full strength by week 1 but for the cornerbacks. But the safeties, is Huff going to be there for week 1?
It doesn't look like it.
I don't think so.
No. I don't think he's going to be there for week 1. And even if he is, he's not going to be ready to go full 100% yet. It's going to be a slow go.
Exactly. So then who is the other safety opposite Jair Brown? Is that going to be – because I doubt that they put Mustafa out there as a rookie. So does that mean George Odom is going to be until Huff is ready to go?
Yeah, that's what I think you're going to see. I think you'll see Odom. Especially when you look at what they did with Huff his rookie year. They kind of redshirt these guys. I think if Mustafa will make the 53, like he'll make the roster, but for him to play big snaps, there's going to have to be injuries. I think Odom will be the guy I think to start there with Brown. And Brown looks like he's poised to take a jump. I like what I've seen from him, so he could be a guy who's taking a second year jump there. But I'll go Odom as the other starting safety.
Yeah, that's what I think. And I want to say what's going on to everybody in the chat. I appreciate you guys all for coming in. Kenny and David McNiner, he's got great content. Make sure you give my guy a follow. And Low the Truth. I saw my guy Twin in here. I appreciate everybody coming through. Make sure that you wipe your feet. Make sure you give us a like. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and hit that bell on both channels, so that you get the content as soon as it comes out. But before we get out of here, we're because we're almost at that hour mark. And my last question for you is, Nick Sorensen is, from what you see, is he going to be like the next great defensive coordinator the next really good defensive coordinator for for the 49ers? And is that and how big of a part does Staley play in that?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. How does Brandon Staley play into this? So it's
Yeah.
a setup we haven't seen where I think you have a head coach on defense, which is essentially what Staley is. And then you have Sorensen, who's going to be calling the defenses or however it's going to be. We got to see how that works out. Is there going to be too many cooks in the kitchen with that? How is that whole thing going to work? So I don't think he's DeMeco Ryans. I don't know if anybody's really DeMeco Ryans, right?
Yeah.
And even Saleh, Saleh took a couple of people wanted Saleh out of there in 2018.
Yeah.
It was 2018 or 2018.
I always liked Saleh.
Yeah, he ended up.
The cupboard was bare when he first got there.
It was. But I think he got better as he was a first-time defensive coordinator. I think he got better as it went on. So yeah, he's following up those two guys. I don't think it's fair to him to really expect that. I think there's going to be some growing pains with the young defensive coordinator, and there's going to have to be a way of feeling it out, whether this is Staley's D or Sorensen's D or a mix of both.
Yeah. No, I like. I just want the scheme back. Like I want the 49ers to go back to being physical, and like because I've always been a big proponent of physicality. It plays mind games with the other teams that you might be a little bit. They might be a little bit faster than you. They may be technically better than you, or whatever the case is. But everything gets evened out once you hit a guy in the mouth. And and I think the 49ers have done that multiple years. Teams that especially when 2019, when they would just keep hitting teams in the mouth until they would just eventually give in. And they had been doing that over the years. I think that was the mentality. I mean, it was our identity as bully ball for years. And then all of a sudden we've kind of fallen away from that. I would love to see them get back to that.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think that's a possibility?
I mean, I think it depends on. I certainly think, like I said, the scheme or the way that they're going to approach it will try to be to get back to that. But can they have the guys that can do it? Even if you look at the playoffs in like 2020, 2021, when they had just the waves of defensive linemen, or maybe 2022, right? Like it would just be like you see Dak Prescott just get shook and just, oh my God, because they keep sending waves of people at you. I don't know if they have that anymore. So I think part of being physical is to be able to push people around up front and have those guys up front. I don't know if they do. So that's going to be a big part of it.
Yeah. I guess we're just gonna have to see. We got the next preseason game on Sunday versus the Saints. They had to cancel practice. Do you think that's an issue? Because I know Kyle loves his practices, and I think he takes a lot. He's always said he takes a lot from those inter squad practices. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a big loss for Kyle?
I think it's a loss. I don't know how big it is though, but those are helpful to teams. They do help, especially now with the way how many times the first month in the NFL tends to be a little bit ugly because teams aren't really ready with the way that camp is now and not as many preseason games and things like that. So those inter squad things or whatever help joint practices help the team get ready and sharpen up, and to not have those, I do think it'll be a little bit of an issue. It remains to see how much, but I don't think it's a good thing. Let's see if it's a bad thing, but it would have been better if they could have done it.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm excited. Even if though it's a preseason game, I still want to see the thing that we're talking about today, which is the depth. I want to see how good, if they improve from the last preseason game, and what's the growth look like? Can they give us any glimpses of what could be this coming season? We're going to get out of here, but Al, I thoroughly appreciate you coming through and giving us some time to talk 49ers and the depth on the 49ers. Why don't you tell everybody out there, one more time, where they can find your content and where they can find you on the socials?
Yeah, at El Sacco 49 on Twitter, 49ers Web Zone. Just search that on YouTube, and please subscribe to that. And then anywhere where you get your podcast, the No Huddle Podcast.
Yeah, I love the show. You and Brian, I think your show is great. I've been watching for a while.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. But we're going to get out of here. I appreciate everyone. Once again, I appreciate everybody in the chat. Make sure you give the video a like. Make sure that you give both channels a subscribe. Make sure that you hit the bell so you get the notifications for when we go live. We are on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We are on YouTube. We are on Twitch. We are about to be on Kick. And if you don't like looking at my face, you can always get the audio version anywhere where you get your audio podcast. So I don't care where you get it, just get it. But with that being said, we're going to get out of here. You guys have a good night. Go Niners. As always, go Niners.